What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And welcome to our show. It is Friday, December 4th, 2020. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today, and this being Friday, we're going to do news for about half an hour. Then we're going to open the phone lines, and then in hour number 2, it's going to be the lovely Lady Claire with her unique perspective on the world. And as usual, Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble and keeping the gremlins at bay. So let's get right on into it. And as has been and will be our case for a while yet, we're starting off again with the election fraud. And apparently the attorneys for Trump's reelection campaign told a Nevada judge in their first election fraud hearing just yesterday that more than 85,000 votes were illegally cast by dead people and non-residents. And that is enough votes to basically flip the state to Donald Trump. So they're starting to get on out there. And I know time is getting tight here, and we're all, hoping that this is going to resolve itself peacefully, but it's getting out there. Okay, now a witness has come forward again yesterday, alleging that the USB drives on the voting machines, the flash drives, had their totals altered overnight in Nevada. And this witness is saying that the memory sticks used to store vote totals from the election machines mysteriously changed overnight. And so, again, we're getting more and more whistleblowers and witnesses coming forward here. All righty. Now, Giuliani presented video evidence of ballot fraud from Atlanta, Georgia, to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, and it shows a Georgia official clearing the room of all observers and then unload and count votes out of a suitcase without a supervisor. Now, the video has gone viral all over the internet. It's posted to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it is definitely a tacky no-no to be processing votes when the observers have already been dismissed for the day. Now, National File identified the vote counter in Georgia who brought in suitcases full of ballots that were counted after the observers were told to leave. Apparently, this person is the daughter of Ruby Freeman. Now, Ruby Freeman is one of the counters in there. And apparently last October 26th, Freeman on Facebook said, y'all want to know who my new supervisor is? It's my daughter. I just do what she say do, and it's her show, baby. It's her show. So that one is coming out there. Now, because of this video and the burgeoning evidence of crookedness, not just in Georgia, but all over the country, Georgia Republican Governor Brian Kemp is now calling for a signature audit of the state's election results. And he did that yesterday. So this is still stirring around here, and the corporate media is not reporting on this. We heard from that Project Veritas tape that CNN, at least, is trying to downplay all these stories about election fraud. The only stories they're running is when one of Trump's lawsuits gets thrown out of court by an obviously compromised judge. Again, in Georgia, a witness has come forward. One of the officials, actually, Ryan Germany, general counsel for the Georgia Secretary of State's office, came on out saying that Dominion voting machines were updated with new software just before the election. And again, that is a very, very smoky gun right there. Up in Pennsylvania, GOP lawmakers have asked the Supreme Court to block the final certification process after Biden's win, claiming the mail-in voting is unconstitutional. And so we'll see what happens with that. Apparently, over in Arizona, the court ordered a sampling of ballots for examination and has found ballot tampering in Biden's favor. Now, it's not a lot, but it's certainly enough to indicate something funny was going on. And hopefully Arizona will call for a full manual recount without these machines, which are obviously compromised. Over in Missouri, we mentioned on this yesterday, apparently a Missouri state representative, Representative Justin Hill, has called on Attorney General Eric Schmidt to prosecute Dominion voting systems over the fact that they are not paying taxes in that state. Oh, yeah, people are just finding reasons to go after that. Everybody recognizes Dominion and Smartmatic, which we now know are linked. The Smartmatic licensed the software from Dominion, and they're trying to go after them because they're very angry. You know, one of the things that gets the American people to put up with the nonsense that comes out of government is the belief that we can vote the bastards out next election. Well, that just got taken away from us. The election was completely fraudulent. Now, not too long ago, the media came out with a claim that Attorney General Barr said that they had not found any evidence of fraud at the Department of Justice. And then the Department of Justice came on out and said, well, the investigation is not complete. And now the official storyline is that the original story was itself fake news by the corporate media. Well, that one keeps changing. And of course, what we know of corporate media, that's entirely possible. Now, Mitt Romney was on CNN State of the Union yesterday, and he basically told Wolf Blitzer that Trump's claims of election fraud are damaging the cause of freedom, putting people's lives at risk, and helping Russia and China. Now, that is getting really desperate. But we're going to be hearing that a lot in the coming days and certainly all next week, that, you know, we've got to stop challenging the election. It's damaging the integrity of our democracy and our electoral process. Well, what damaged the integrity of the election process is all the fraud that is surfacing all over the country. And I'm going to put out a call here to Rivero's Rangers to take these stories where you find them and email them to your friends, show them, you know, print out hard copies and show them around, because corporate media is absolutely refusing to cover any of this. Now, getting into non-election politics here, apparently Trump is in high dudgeon against Senator Inhofe for not adding a repeal of Section 230 to the defense bill, and he's threatening to veto it. Now, Kayleigh McEnany came on out and said, you better believe the president is serious about this. Without that repeal of Section 230, the National Defense Authorization Act will get vetoed. And this is probably, you know, something that Trump is very emotional about, given how the social media really worked against him and against conservatives in general. And so if he is going to be forced to leave office in the face of this coup d'etat, he's going to leave a legacy of people being able to sue social media for violations of the truth, for liability. Of course, I'm sure that, you know, once Biden and his people are back in office, they will try and restore that immunity, because that's their payback to social media for being such hand-in-glove friends during the campaign here. Now, Joe Biden is out there, and by the way, he's apparently been able to take off that supportive boot from his ankle, and he's hobbling around as well as ever. Biden is vowing that his family's business dealings, including those of Hunter Biden, will not conflict with his role as commander-in-chief. And of course, he's dismissing the prior allegations of inappropriate business deals that took place while he was vice president. And I would say this is probably four Pinocchios right here. Getting into some other issues, Biden's frontrunner for Secretary of Health and Human Services is saying that gun control is a health care issue. And I'm not sure where they think they're going with that, other than it underscores that there will be a gun grabber agenda under Biden. Now, NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden is publicly urging President Donald Trump to grant clemency to WikiLeaks' Julian Assange. Frankly, I think he should go further than that and grant a full pardon. And while we're at it, let's talk about Leonard Peltier and Mumia Abu-Jamal, who are victims of judicial impropriety and FBI malfeasance. All right, let's talk about coronavirus. There's a lot of stuff going on over there, and you're going to love this one. The CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, has said that Pfizer is not certain that its COVID-19 vaccine will prevent the transmission of the novel coronavirus. In other words, if you have this vaccine and you get the coronavirus, you could still be contagious to others, which kind of tells me this vaccine isn't really doing much of anything. So, there, you know, I don't know if he's trying to protect Pfizer from litigation, but again, we're already seeing countries like Great Britain, put in limits to liability on all these vaccine companies. Now, an interesting little story. This came out of children'shealthdefense.org, which is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s organization here. And he's talking about how last November 18th, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam told reporters that he could see the light at the end of the tunnel when Pfizer and Moderna announced preliminary results of their COVID vaccine trials had demonstrated a high percentage of effectiveness without really defining what effectiveness is. And apparently the concern coming on out here is that the vaccines will prevent the symptoms, but not actually cure the disease. And this dovetails with the statement made by the CEO of Pfizer that you could still be contagious after getting the vaccine. And to me, this is another reason to not get the vaccine. It's not doing anything. Now, getting on back to indemnity, this is out of the Independent in Great Britain. Pfizer has been given protection from legal action by the British government. And apparently the Parliament has granted pharmaceutical giant Pfizer a legal indemnity protecting it from being sued if their vaccine, in fact, causes damage, like the 1976 swine flu vaccine did. All righty, here is another little story. This is from David Icke's website. Apparently, the British government information for health professionals has a very interesting quote in it. And it says, quote, "It is unknown whether COVID-19 mRNA vaccine BNT162b2 has an impact on fertility," end quote. Now, we've had some experts we reported on earlier in the week saying that, yeah, this thing could sterilize a lot of people. I mean, it may actually be what this is all about, the population reduction that all the globalists and the ultra-left liberals really want here. And notice how the government isn't saying that the vaccine does not have an impact on fertility. They're basically hedging their bets by saying, well, we don't really know. Now, down in Australia, they have mandated COVID-19 testing for everybody, and there's a very alarming quote out there in this article: "Reasonable force will be used to ensure your compliance." And apparently this man traveling in Western Australia captured it on video when police and an emergency health officer issued him with a medical examination direction for the mandatory testing. And apparently Australia will fine you up to $20,000 for failing to get a test. And probably they're going to follow it up with mandatory vaccination here. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci is once again doubling down against festive travel plans and gatherings on Christmas morning or Christmas Eve. And he's telling Americans not to travel and to minimize gatherings at home for the holidays. So I wish I had the theme song from The Grinch here. I'd be playing it right now. Out in California, Governor Newsom is ordering new limits on California businesses and activities because of COVID-19. And the rules, which take effect tomorrow, will last for 21 days. That's going to take it right up to Christmas, once local critical care facilities approach capacity. And Newsom is saying if we don't act now, our hospital system will be overwhelmed. But what we're getting from medical professionals in California is that the hospitals really aren't full. They've got a lot of empty beds, and that it's just not this horror we've been told. Anyway, California is going to be locked down for 3 weeks by Governor Newsom. He's ordered a stay-at-home order for regions where ICU capacity falls below 15%. And it's, I'm sure glad I don't live in California anymore. Delaware has issued a stay-at-home advisory and an indoor mask order and is recommending remote learning for children, even though it's already been documented that remote learning is not as effective as in-person classes. So they're running that one. This is going to run through Christmas up to January 11. Now, the other day we were talking about this vaccination card that's coming on out to help the CDC vaccinate you. Apparently, the Department of Defense has released an image of their COVID vaccination cards, and these are wallet-sized. And basically, everyone will be issued a written card to put in their wallet that will tell them what they had and when their next dose is due. And apparently, they want your cell phone number so they can nag you about the multiple shots this vaccine will require. So basically, we're heading down the same path that Great Britain is heading, where the British vaccine minister, Nadim Zahawi, is saying that, public places like bars, restaurants, and cinemas are going to demand proof of vaccination before entry. So they're not going to order you to get the vaccine. They're simply going to shut down your life if you don't have it, which is coercive, however you want to say it. And, remember months ago when we were saying that you would not be allowed to travel or leave the house without a vaccine passport. And everybody said, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. Well, not every conspiracy theory is fake. You need to keep that in mind. Over in the European Union, the Christmas rules there are saying no communal singing and televised church only, and that has also hit us here in Indiana. I think I mentioned before that Claire's Bell Choir is on hold until at least January, and all church services are going to be virtual only until further notice. So it's definitely out there. Over in France, the anti-vax sentiment is growing sharply. The latest poll put the number of people opposed to the jab at higher than 50% for the first time. And this was conducted by pollster IFOP, and they found that almost 60% of the French public do not intend to get that vaccine. So good for the French. I guess they're getting pretty fed up with all of the abuse from their government as well. And I'm sure there's still some of those guillotines, stashed away in barns somewhere out there in the wilderness there. Over in Italy, the northern Italian region of Val d'Aosta is defying coronavirus restrictions, declared itself a yellow zone, and they're reopening all their restaurants, bars, shops, and businesses. And just so that you know, there's always been a little bit of a tension between northern and southern Italy. Sometimes it will feel like it's two separate countries. There's the part down south where Rome is, then you have the Lombard region. There it is, the Grinch theme. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And welcome to our back to our show here, and a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network does need your help. And we've got our Christmas stockings already hung up by the chimney with care. And we'd like to ask our listeners to put just a little something in there to help us continue to fight off corporate media and political corruption, dishonest elections, and all those other things that we are never really going to get used to in this country here. So as a friendly reminder, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer, anonymity cash is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And all of this donor information is also available at the top of the Republic Broadcasting website at republicbroadcasting.org. The network thanks you. All righty, getting on back to COVID-19. Facebook is now banning everything they call a false claim about the COVID vaccines. They're relying on government health experts to tell them what the authoritative truth is, and all posts questioning the safety of the vaccine will be removed. So definitely Facebook has become a propaganda organ of the deep state. Now, Joe Biden has announced that Dr. Anthony Fauci will stay on as the COVID czar, I guess, and will ask Americans to wear masks for the first 100 days of his administration. That's 3 months to go on wearing these masks. And I don't know if Hunter Biden has bought stock in the companies that make these masks or what the deal is. But, you know, it really has reached ridiculous points here, and it really is very silly here. All right, interesting little insight article. This is from Hammond. I'm sorry, I can't read that. Hannibin Tuther, I think. You can find it on whatreallyhappened.com, saying that very few people are discussing the massive redistribution of wealth caused by the coronavirus pandemic. And they're pointing out how people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates have just made a huge amount of money. They own stocks in the pharmaceutical companies, which are going up, up, up. And we know that in the last few months of the pandemic, the country's richest people have added another $1 trillion to their wealth. So I guess that's how they're making back all the money they spent to get Joe Biden to steal the election here. Okay, we're coming up on another break, and we're going to go ahead and open the lines. Area code 512-248-8252. Getting to the international news here, apparently the Russian and Syrian air forces are increasing attacks in Central Asia against Islamic State or ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever they call themselves this week here. This is taking place in Hama, Al-Raqqa, and the Homs governorates. And apparently the strikes were led by Russian Air Force, who unleashed over 30 strikes in the past 72 hours. Now, the United Nations General Assembly last Wednesday approved 5 anti-Israeli resolutions as part of a package of 20 pro-Palestinian texts that the 193-member body adopts on an annual basis. Now, one of the documents passed condemns the so-called Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights, a territory that Israel seized from Syria in the Six-Day War and annexed 4 years later, in a move that was never recognized by the world community. All right, getting into some economic news here. Apparently, one of the things they are putting into the National Defense Authorization Act are expanded Nord Stream 2 sanctions. You know, this is all about shutting down this pipeline whereby Russia would be able to send oil and gas to Europe. And, it's all about the money. It's all about the oil money. It's all about keeping Ukraine straddling the one existing pipeline to keep them protected here. So the United States has now added 4 more Chinese companies to the defense blacklist over alleged military ties. And this includes China's top chip maker, SMIC, and the oil giant China National Offshore Oil Corporation. And the 2 other companies are claimed to have ties to the People's Liberation Army, the China Construction Technology Company Limited, and the China International Engineering Consulting Corporation. And this brings the total to 35 blacklisted countries. And we're going to take a break for commercials, and then we're going to start taking phone calls. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to start taking phone calls, and we're going to start with Dan in Texas. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Thank you, Mike. First, on the indemnity issue for Pfizer.
Yes.
Indemnity is a situation legally where if you sue me, and you can sue me, and you get a judgment against me, somebody else pays that judgment.
No, that sounds
Immunity
about right.
Immunity is where you cannot sue me, period. And I'm just curious if when they're talking about indemnity for Pfizer, if they're actually talking about immunity from being sued. And then the only other thing I had was on this, I believe it's Article 230 or something in the NDAA related to social media that Trump would veto.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what that section is and how it would either benefit or harm the social media? What is it and what would it do? And I'll listen on air.
Okay, well, basically what Section 230 did was it protected social media from lawsuits relating to possible misbehavior, like sanctionings, conservatives, shutting them down, censoring them, putting out false information. Basically, if 230 was repealed, then social media would be on the same legal level as the corporate media, where they could be sued for defamation, they could be sued for libel. I think this is Trump's parting shot against the social media for how they behaved during this election season. Okay, thank you for the call, Dan. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? A couple of things. One is with this COVID nonsense, it's getting worse and worse.
Yes.
I heard the actual mayor of Los Angeles just issued some kind of a you can't even go out and walk around outside.
Yeah, I got that one. Yeah, Garcetti just said you can't even go outside to walk.
Well, the people got to just go out there, overwhelm everything, and go out there and walk around, do whatever they want, stop social distancing, don't go out with a mask. The police want to be the enemy of the people, let them try. And this is not Australia. We don't pay our allegiance to a pedophile, degenerate royal family. We pledge our allegiance to the God and country in this country, in the United States. And we also have a Second Amendment. And that's just the way it is.
Being nonviolent, I have an alternative suggestion for all of our listeners in Los Angeles or anywhere else where they're doing this. Dress up like a homeless person and you can walk anywhere you want.
That's true. You got a point there.
Okay.
But this guy, this Newsom, he's another one. I mean, the governor, a total hypocrite. I also believe he's a pedophile. He certainly looks like one. I'm so disgusted.
I'm a little troubled by that. What does a pedophile look like? You know, I mean, it's like anything like me?
To me, that's
okay.
No, just look at Newsom. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, maybe he's not. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, he is one because he certainly acts like one. Okay. These people got to stand up. They cannot take this stuff. They cannot let this go. And as far as Biden goes, the gall of this thief. He thinks he's going to steal this election and then tell us what we got to wear masks. Are you talking about, by the way, you're talking about inside and outside, Mike?
He just said he's going to ask people to wear masks for the first 100 days of his administration. I'm absolutely appalled at that, but it is a definite giveaway of how tyrannical and dictatorial the Biden administration is going to be in terms of trying to control every single aspect of our lives, which is, of course, the liberal agenda to control everything.
So this senile old fool, this thief, this crook, and he is a pedophile. That we know. We know that from the, all the stuff they tried to cover up, him and his son, okay?
Yes.
And what he does with little girls and stuff like that. This decrepit old, disgusting pedophile thinks he's going to order us. Who does he think he's not going to have the respect of the people if, God forbid, he does get that White House. And by the way, I'm thinking less and less that he is going to get into that White House. There's more and more corruption coming out.
Yes.
Actual smoking gun stuff like in Atlanta, in Michigan, in Wisconsin. I think if nothing else, the Republican legislatures are going to turn around and they're not going to nominate Biden. And I think as a last resort, I'm telling you again what I said before. I'm going by what some of these generals are saying, like General Valame, something like that.
McNerney?
And General Flynn and a couple others are saying, I think if Trump has to, he will declare martial law. I think that's why he's accumulating all this evidence. The speech he made the other day, if you read between the lines, I watched it a couple of times. I was reading between the lines. I think he's making it clear. Biden is not going to get this presidency. No way, no how. Okay, so now as far as Trump himself goes, though, why he hasn't gotten rid of Fauci already, I don't know. Instead, what's his name, Scott Atlas?
Scott Atlas.
Resigning.
Yes.
Why don't you get rid of Fauci already? Open up. Stop with the emergency order that you had, okay? Replace it with a new emergency order that we have to have a fair election and a new election.
Mm-hmm.
Stop with the vaccines. Why are you pushing it? Now, I heard Alex Jones earlier today say that vaccine that Trump is pushing is not as dangerous. It doesn't have that RNA, what do you call it, that RNA subject in it.
mRNA.
But
mRNA.
I don't know. I haven't heard anything like that. I heard this stuff is all has the RNA in it. It's very dangerous. It is meant to. I think it is meant to sterilize millions and millions of people. I think it's meant to kill a lot of other people. This is Bill Gates has his filthy fingerprints all over it, and these criminals. By the way, I hope if we do have martial law, I hope criminals like Gates are locked up. I really do.
Yes.
Okay? The man deserves to Gitmo, and I'll tell you the truth. I would love somebody to invite me down to Gitmo then to deal with Gates, to question him, because I would waterboard his ass real good.
No, I just make him work with Millennium Edition, for the rest of his life.
Yeah, no, I'd waterboard his butt. I'd make sure. I'd find out everything that man knows. Okay, Mike? Everything he knows. And that's what Trump should do. He needs to stop with this vaccine. We don't need a vaccine. This thing is not that dangerous. It's basically a cold. Most people, the vast majority of people that get it, survive and do fine.
Yes.
I know people have gotten it, or at least supposedly they've gotten it. Who knows whether these diagnoses are even right or not. But
yes.
They've recovered fully, including a woman, the mother of my friend who's 75 years old, had a liver transplant. And you know what? She got it, and she recovered in 4 days. Recovered faster than my friend recovered. All right?
Mm-hmm.
I found out why, too. Because of the liver transplant, evidently she was taking a lot of vitamin D.
Yes, that definitely helps.
The doctor. So these are the things. this is not that serious a disease. It should be, if you do get it, it can be easily, I don't know about cured. You don't cure the common cold. You basically got to get it out of your system.
Yes.
It's basically the same thing, but there are stuff you can do to make it a lot less serious, the symptoms a lot better, okay? And, you know, by the way, I spent my time in Thanksgiving with family and friends, okay? I didn't social distance. I didn't wear a mask, do any of those things. And
yes.
You see, I'm talking to you. It doesn't sound like I'm coughing or hacking or anything else, does it? Now, maybe I do have it. I don't know. I don't get tested. Maybe it's, you know, I'm one of these, what are you, asymptomatic? I don't know. But I don't plan on having myself tested to find out. And as far as Australia goes, what they're doing, necessary force, this is what happens when a country gives, first of all, pledges allegiance to a degenerate pedophile royal family, and also then gives up their guns when the government tells them to. And this is what happens in Australia. Bye-bye democracy. They're now just they're as bad as China, maybe worse than China. Okay? Because China at least says something for its people. Australia, I don't know what they're doing for its people, other than exploiting them now. So that's about all I got to say, Mike. Anyway, hope you have a good weekend. All right, and let's pray that that this election gets turned around, and that we're going to have at least. I'm not great. You can believe me. I'm not thrilled with Trump, but compared to Biden, he's 1,000 times better. Okay.
I would agree with you on that one. I absolutely would. And yeah, we're all hoping this will get turned around and corrected because, again, you know, if we really don't have honest, verifiable elections, then we don't really have a country anymore. So, Mark, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to switch. All right. We're going to switch over to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I didn't hear everything that Mark said about a city or a county mandating the wearing of masks.
No,
Who was it that mandated it?
This is coming from Joe Biden, that he's going to ask all Americans to wear masks for the first 100 days of his administration.
Joe Biden is not yet president.
Nope.
And even if he were president, he has been delegated the authority over us only in that he was elected, duly elected. And I don't think there's anywhere, I don't know enough about the U.S. law or the Constitution to say this, but if you're delegated authority, can you then delegate that authority to someone else? And furthermore, if he's going to make it mandatory, or is it voluntary?
Well, at the moment, it sounds like he's simply saying he's going to ask Americans to wear the masks for 100 days. But if nobody's going along with it, I'm sure that the wording will be changed to be a little bit more forceful. But it certainly shows the mindset that Joe Biden has, you know, with this whole coronavirus thing.
He has no right. He has not yet been affirmed or sworn in as president.
He was not duly elected either. You know, let's not use the word duly, because he stole he didn't steal the election, it was stolen for him.
Well, with his encouragement and his delight.
Sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's why he never left his base for the campaign. He knew he didn't have to.
And even if he were going to, anybody, whether it's Biden or any health official, even a health official is not elected. So a health official basically has been delegated authority by someone else who has authority that was delegated to them through an election. You cannot delegate the authority that you have been delegated. It's just, you can't just pass on whatever authority you might have without the permission of those who initially delegated that authority. And furthermore, if you're going to make it mandatory,
it's not the way that it works here in the United States. Here, I mean, you know, obviously the president is one person, and they can't do everything in the executive branch themselves, and that's why they have, you know, the cabinet, various other advisors, and yeah, they can delegate the authority. The only time they can't is when it's expressly forbidden by the Constitution, and the Constitution does not make any mention of that.
Actually, it does at the very beginning, but it doesn't say, it doesn't, it's been, over the years, it has been exaggerated and made extreme. For example, the federal bureaucracy is not specifically referred to, as far as I can see, in the Constitution. It was only in the time, I believe, of Alexander Hamilton that he talked about certain institutions being created to perform certain functions.
Yes.
But they were essential functions. They had nothing to do with controlling the body of an individual and what they choose to do with it. Now, the irony is that if that does become mandatory in the U.S., they also have to subscribe or prescribe what the penalty will be if you refuse. And that is going to have a lot of law behind it. But if it is mandated in the U.S., it's going to be mandated here in Canada. Do you know that in Canada, the euthanasia law is legal?
Yes,
so
I'm aware of that.
The federal government is allowing people with or without a terminal disease to request euthanasia or self-suicide, and then they're going to tell you that, and then mandate that you have to wear a mask to protect yourself. The whole thing is crazy. You know how I've repeatedly said that I'm totally opposed to any kind of violence.
Yes.
I think they're getting more bold because they think, you know how idiots, semi-conscious idiots think that somebody who backs off from violence is a coward and will succumb and roll over and die. I think it's time that they know that they are going to not only face opposition, but be faced with opposition far greater than they're even capable of imagining. And that those of us who have been talking soft, even little old ladies like me, who happen to be very strong for my age, I've had no major surgeries. I would not for a moment hesitate to initiate aggressive action if anyone attempted anything on my person or attempted to mandate something against my will. And I hope other people begin to take up that mantra. And furthermore, I listened to Trump's speech. What a fantastic, amazing thing. No other president would have dared to do what he's doing. He's the right man for the right time at a very critical time. Anyway, take care. Best to all.
All right. Well, thank you very much here. We're going to let you go, Layla. Just got an interesting email. I live in Burbank, California. I work in the movie industry. So far, no one is obeying this new lockdown order. People are everywhere. Most stores are still open. Seems good so far. All right. We got to take a break for commercials. We got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back.
She doesn't know she's a favorite daughter. Someone wants to help her.
Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to the phones here to Kathleen in Texas. Hello, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today? Kathleen, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Kathleen, and so, all right. Okay. Yeah, we may have lost audio for her. All right, well, the gremlins are doing what they normally do here. So the lines are, we're going to close the lines now because the Lady Claire is about to join us. And so let me do a little bit more news here. Getting on back to the economy, China has overtaken the United States as the European Union's biggest trade partner. And this is happening, I mean, the entire world is sliding into the red because of this supposed COVID-19 pandemic. And so they're doing very well over there. Now, Senator Menendez is out there saying that as a result of this pandemic, 3.3 million small businesses have closed and 1.1 million local and state employees have lost their jobs. And this is, these are terrible, terrible numbers. And it's the lockdowns and the masks are doing far more damage to our country than the actual COVID-19 virus. When you look at the survival rate for people who get this, it's no worse than a normal flu bug. Okay. Now, this one is a little bit weird, and again, it shows us the direction the liberals want to take this country. Apparently, the Seattle City Council is floating legislation to provide an exemption from prosecution for misdemeanor crimes for any citizen who suffers from poverty, homelessness, addiction, or mental illness. It's a blanket get out of jail free card for all of these people, and basically would cover more than 90% of all misdemeanor cases citywide. Basically, they're creating a new class of untouchables. And I think this is an extraordinarily stupid and dangerous thing for them to be doing. All righty, over in Great Britain, students at Manchester University have demanded the word black should be banned because it is divisive. And, you know, they're talking about when it's used as a negative expression, such as the word blackmail. And the first thing I thought when I heard this story is this is really going to mess up books on optics and cosmology that have things like black holes. And so they're going to have to be renamed with some kind of a politically correct term here. Over in Knoxville, Tennessee, just a hoot and a holler over that way here, apparently there's a family celebrating the birth of a baby girl 27 years after her embryo was frozen. And that is an amazing accomplishment. And it underscores that no embryo should just be thrown away because somebody down the road may want it. Okay, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while here. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire, who likes to share hour number 2 every Friday with her unique perspective on the world. So, lovely Lady Claire, what do you have for us?
Well, you were talking a little bit about the economy, and I think there are some numbers we need to look at. And this comes to us from Zero Hedge. And for those of you who haven't gone over and looked at it, I think you will find it a pretty spot-on blog.
Okay.
And the headline says, November payrolls preview. It's about to get ugly again. And apparently we have had several months of really excellent job growth. But right now, economists are expecting the rate of U.S. job growth to cool sharply this month. With
Actually,
most
this
of
is
them.
December. I have a feeling this is an older article here.
Well, no, but they're looking for the end of November numbers, which comes out in December.
All right.
Okay. They're looking for 478,000 non-farm payrolls to be added, well below the 638,000 seen in October. They're trying to blame the coronavirus for it, but come on, guys, we know what's going on.
Yes.
And business restrictions, which are getting out there, and it's consistent with deceleration in job growth. Did you talk about Garcetti and walking?
Actually, we had a caller who called on in about it, and I told everybody in Los Angeles, just dress up like a homeless person and you can walk wherever you want.
Oh, that'd work.
Yeah, that'll work.
That'll
work. All right.
And the jobless rate is seen declining by 0.1 PPTS to 6.8%. Now, analysts are going to be paying attention to the U6 gauge of underemployment as well as the participation rate. Apparently, we have had employers announcing 64,797 job cuts. Now, it's the second lowest monthly total for 2020, according to Challenger's data.
I'm not sure how much I trust the data on any employment because we've known those books are being cooked for a very, very long time.
The report noted that there's been a fall in disposable income seen in October, which will have an impact on spending, which will lead to further cuts ahead.
Yes.
And market conditions were cited as the main reason for November's job cuts, followed by demand turndown, then restructuring, and only then COVID, theoretically.
Theoretically.
Okay. The report also said that companies announced 185,500 hiring plans for November, bringing the year-to-date total to 3.11 million. Of those, just under 800,000 are related to seasonal hiring plans, which are down year for year when compared to 2019 levels. So, folks, the bottom line is if you have a job, even if it may not be your dream job, you're in a lot better shape than a lot of people out there.
Yes, it's really ugly out there. And of course, my dream job is quality control inspector at the local whorehouse, but they're not hiring.
No,
Okay.
dear, I don't
All right.
think they are.
All right.
The lines around our food banks in this country are huge, and they're probably worse than we've seen since the Depression. Mike, what would your
Absolutely.
observation be?
Well, we don't see as many lines per se because people are being given these EBT cards.
Okay.
So they go through the supermarket, they look like regular shoppers, they shop, they check out, and it's a way of, sort of hiding the real scale of food insecurity in this country.
Yes. I would like to go to a charge that has been leveled against China by Ratcliffe, and he has called China the biggest threat to national security, and they have been conducting, wait for it, super soldier experiments.
And they've been doing that for a lot of years on prisoners.
Okay, and this is coming from the National Intelligence Director, John Ratcliffe, who says that China is the number one threat to U.S. national security, democracy, and freedom since World War II. And
Hot, kettle, black.
hello, and warns that America faces a once-in-a-generation challenge to resist Beijing's effort to reshape the world in its own image. Now, this comes from an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. And he makes the observation the intelligence is clear. Beijing intends to dominate the U.S. and the rest of the planet economically, militarily, and technologically. Many of China's major public initiatives and prominent companies only offer a layer of camouflage to the activities of the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, they can't think of anything else to do, so they're going to start a war with China. They're going to start a war with Russia, and we've seen this happen before. Every time the United States government gets this country into a real economic mess, they get into a world war to get out of it. Crash of 1907, World War I, crash of 1929, World War II, crash of 2008, and here we are, making stink face at all these other countries around the world who have not really done anything to us. China is engaged in commerce. They're engaged in manufacturing. And, you need to look back at the 80s and 90s when American companies were actually being incentivized to, offshore these manufacturing and tech jobs to these other countries. And, we lost our preeminence in manufacturing. We lost our technological edge. A lot of stuff that was invented here in the United States of America has been improved on and developed by these countries in China and Taiwan and Japan especially. And so now, unable to compete with China, the U.S. is just going to bomb them.
And why Ratcliffe is making all of these charges about super soldiers that the Chinese are experimenting with. I mean, hello, Mike. For decades after its inception in 1958, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the Central Research and Development Organization of the Department of Defense, has been focused on developing vast weapon systems and super soldiers. Starting in 1990, a new focus was put on soldiers, airmen, and sailors on transforming humans for war. Now, the progress of these efforts, to the extent it could be assessed through public information, kind of hints at war's future and raises questions about whether military technology can be stopped or should.
Well, we know that there's already a lot of pharmaceuticals that are being used to make our soldiers more soldierly. A lot of people don't know this, but methamphetamine, which is now abused as a recreational drug, was actually developed in Nazi Germany as a battlefield weapon.
And from 2 years ago, we had an article from The Atlantic, and it said, who could object? And it was about a speech that was given several years back. And the speaker made the observation, tonight, I would like to share with you an idea that I'm very passionate about. The young man said, his long black hair was swept back like a rock star's or a gangster's. I like that writing.
Yes.
Think about this, he continued. Throughout all human history, the way that we have expressed our intent, the way we have expressed our goals, the way we have expressed our desires has been limited by our bodies. And he was smoking something, and his rib cage expanded and filled out the fabric of his shirt. And
I don't think he was smoking something. It simply said he inhaled.
Yes.
And his rib cage
Okay.
swelled.
All right.
Okay.
And he said, and he pointed toward himself, he said, we are born into this world with this, whatever nature or luck, or maybe in some cases, a little bit of perseverance has given us.
Yes.
And his speech then started to turn a little bit. And he makes the observations. Now, we've had a lot of interesting tools over the years, but fundamentally, the way we work with those tools is through our bodies.
This is before the age of the robotics revolution.
Right. Then
Okay.
it turned further. I believe that this address was from 2012. And he says, here's a situation that I know all of you know very well. Your frustration with your smartphones, right? This is another tool, and we still are communicating with these tools through our bodies. And then he veered off in a very interesting direction and made the observation, now we've had a lot of interesting tools over the years, but fundamentally, the way that we have worked with those tools is through our bodies. Then he offered the following.
This is a repeat of an earlier paragraph. I'm sorry to interrupt here.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
And the talk was by Justin Sanchez, who was then an associate professor of biomedical engineering and neuroscience at the University of Miami and a faculty member of the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. He was speaking at a TEDx conference in Florida in 2012. And he asked the question, what lies beyond bionics? Sanchez described his work as trying to understand the neural code, which would involve putting very fine microwire electrodes the size of a human hair into the brain. And he said, when we do that, we would be able to listen in to the music of the brain and listen in to what somebody's motor intent might be.
Yes.
And get a glimpse of your goals and rewards, then start to understand how the brain encodes behavior.
Yes.
So here's kind of where we are and how the military has tried to create an army of super soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, technology wasn't actually the method by which the military tried originally to create an army of super soldiers. It wasn't a special armor or Captain America-like serum. No, like most harebrained schemes of the Cold War, the military attempted to create a kind of warrior monk soldier with paranormal abilities that would take on the defense of the United States when technology could not.
Now, that actually turned out to be
Yeah.
a propaganda weapon against the Soviet Union.
Because they were doing remote viewing,
Well,
right?
no, they started doing their stuff in response to a planted story from the United States that they'd succeeded in communicating from the ground to a submerged submarine
All right.
through a couple of people who were
Which
psychically sensitive. And
Never
Russia,
happened.
Soviet Union wound up spending a huge amount of money trying to duplicate all of that stuff.
And apparently the 1st Earth Battalion
I remember
was
this.
more than just a bunch of men staring at goats. The idea was taken from the human potential movement, a counterculture phenomenon of the 60s, which believed humans were not using their full mental and physical capability in their lives, and thus could be and do more when properly trained or motivated. Now, at the end of the Vietnam War, apparently the U.S. military was ready to review how it fought wars and try an approach less focused on filling body bags. When the Army sent word that it was seeking new ways of fighting and training soldiers, they got a lot of really interesting responses, as you
I
can
can imagine.
But some had some merit, like sleep learning and mental rehearsal. It also offered some of the less down-to-earth ideas in American culture. It attempted to create an army focused on unleashing the human potential locked within the bodies of its soldiers unused. So the U.S. created a 12 million pound set of experiments to create bioenhanced super soldiers. The U.S. announced that it would carry out secret experiments with the ominous goal of creating a bioenhanced super soldier. The mysterious project was set to carry out extreme experiments with the aim of engineering a generation of these terrifying super soldiers. And what they wanted these people to do was to be able to respond to their world with enhanced senses and the ability to skip sleep.
Again, the methamphetamine.
Yeah. And the funding documents from the U.S. Special Ops Command revealed there was an eerie scale of the military trials. And according to the U.S. DoD documents, the bioenhancement experiments will develop technologies to maximize physiological performance, including increased endurance, increased tolerance to environmental extremes, enhanced senses, and enhanced overall fitness without noticeable augmentation, and would be able to cope under highly stressful situations. And thankfully, these tests did use human simulators instead of volunteer test subjects. And that brings us to another question in terms of the super soldier.
Yes.
And it's a question that I think needs to be asked. Short-term superhuman, if we can create augmented soldiers, what happens when we need to turn them back?
That would probably be a very difficult trick. I mean, again, Gulf War syndrome.
Yeah. And you think about a soldier wearing a skull cap, maybe stimulating his brain to make him learn skills faster, or reads his thoughts as a way to control a drone. Another might be plugged into a Tron-like active cyber defense system in which he mentally teams up with the computer systems to successfully multitask during complex military missions. Now, the Pentagon is already, starting to research these seemingly sci-fi concepts. But one thing I'd like to remind our readers and listeners about, isn't it amazing how soon these days in the 21st century, science fiction
becomes science fact.
Into science fact. The basics of brain-machine interfaces are being developed. And we know this because now we're getting videos of patients moving prosthetic limbs with their minds. I mean, for these patients, that must be incredible.
Well, there was a story that came through here a couple of months back where scientists had actually developed a machine that would scan your brain and display on a computer screen what you were imagining or dreaming, the actual pictures.
Wow.
Not very sharp, not very accurate, but still, obviously the beginning of something else here.
And the Defense Department is examining newly scientific tools like genetic engineering, brain chemistry, and shrinking robotics for even more dramatic enhancements. But the question I think needs to be asked, what happens when these soldiers go back home? Go back home to their wives and their kids and their moms and their maiden aunties? How do these effects not become permanent? And Mike, that's
certainly with
question.
The genetic enhancements. I mean, that strikes me as being pretty much irreversible.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the government may simply decide they're no longer needed and simply get rid of them. Remember when they went to a mechanized army and what they did with all those war horses?
Yes.
Just put them in a pit and shot them all.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, the fact that the Chinese may possibly be ahead of us in these endeavors is not lost on me. But I do have to wonder, when these super cyber soldiers are programmed after completing their missions, will they self-destruct or be simply considered casualties of war? Mike, what are your thoughts?
Certainly, that would be one way to go because, these augmented soldiers, which we presume are going to be augmented in their aggression, you're not going to want them back. In the civil population here. I mean, we're already at a state right now where the government is trying to declare returning military veterans as mentally incapable of having Second Amendment rights.
Like guns, yeah.
And so yes.
Yeah. I think that we need to think about this very hard and very intelligently. And is it worth it to society that these people become useless at the end of their military service? That's, that's a moral, that's a slippery slope to me,
It's
Mike.
a very, very slippery
Very
slope.
slippery.
And, something we need to keep in mind when they're talking about the genetic enhancements,
Mhm.
that has to be done before the embryo gestates. And that means they're going to have to somehow recruit or draft a whole bunch of women to act as host mothers.
Yeah.
Again, that's a very alarming idea.
I think so. Do you remember years ago, Max Headroom, which was so ahead of its time?
Love that show.
But they talked about a situation where a pregnancy could happen without the pregnancy having to be in the womb. And just the right nourishment, the right whatever. And moms and dads could come to this place and pick up their newborn child.
You'd have to have an artificial placenta, obviously, but somebody's probably working on that as well.
Yeah.
The trick, of course, is that there's a whole series of hormones provided by the mother at different stages of the embryonic development. You're going to have to mimic those as well.
Right.
But a factory to produce these super soldiers, they'd be seen as property and disposable. Okay.
Ouch. Yeah.
All righty. We've got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back with more of the Lady Claire. Welcome back to our show here. And Claire, would you go ahead and do your next story?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The UK's Deputy Chief Medical Officer warned us on Wednesday that despite the arrival of COVID vaccines, face masks will have to be worn for years to come. Really?
Okay.
Professor Jonathan Van Tam said that he expects to see the face coverings become as commonplace as they are in China or other places in the Far East.
Yeah,
now,
but
folks,
those people are wearing those for pollution.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the air is like chunky in some of those areas.
Yes.
Here in Indiana, air is not chunky, a little cold right now, but not chunky.
A lot of pollen.
Yeah, and Van Tam says that there will be no opportunity to have a massive party and throw out our masks and hand sanitizer now that a vaccine is here.
It's basically, they're telling us again, this new vaccine is not really going to work.
Yeah,
Okay.
And he also warned that the vaccine isn't going to help you if you don't take it, adding that watching others take it and hoping that this will then protect you isn't going to work.
Translation, the vaccine doesn't work.
He added that the virus is going to be with humankind likely forever. Really? Humankind has learned how to conquer or live with other diseases in human history. So why are we wearing these in the first place? Now, masks are compulsory in our state, Indiana, so I wear one when I'm out and about. And also, my little Methodist church has asked nicely, once we get back to real rather than virtual worship, for us to wear them when we are in church, so I do. But are they really saving anyone from the disease? And Mike, I'm still not seeing the hard science that says yes.
I'm not either. I mean, I'm seeing all these reports about how the virus particles are able to get through the weave of the cloth.
Yeah.
Now they're seeing that even the N95s may not be adequate protection.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of evidence, at least that I have seen, that the masks are creating other problems for people like mastne and bacterial pneumonia if the masks are not removed and cleaned regularly or replaced. Now, my current observation about the forced use of masks, it's becoming the West, from a sociological perspective, and bear with me for a moment, it's become the West's hijab.
Yes.
To cover the face and be unable to read any emotions behind it. It's a way of enforcing compliance and at the same time herd mentality that anything the government states has to be taken as gospel. Well, I don't take anything the government says is gospel, even if it might possibly be true.
I'm like George Carlin. I don't believe anything the government says. And one of the things these masks are doing, of course, is they're hiding our identities from each other to basically depersonalize us and turn us into a single mass of identity-less humanity here.
Yeah. And I think once I see what the vaccine injury is for people of my demographic, and I'm 71, I'm not going to say I'm not necessarily going to take it, but I'm going to want to know everything that's in it. And like I said, I'm going to want to know what the numbers look like.
Hard getting reliable information,
Yeah.
but we're getting numbers here that the actual death rate for COVID-19 is incredibly low.
2%, wasn't it, when we crunched the numbers?
Something like that. And, that's about what the seasonal flu does.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe really the best thing is to avoid the shot, avoid the mask, let people get sick and develop natural antibodies in their system. And then it won't matter if the virus sticks around forever.
Yeah.
We'll all be immune to it. Remember when German measles first showed up?
Yeah.
And it was a slate wiper.
Yes.
And, over the generations, we have sort of learned to coexist with it. And now it's just a minor childhood annoyance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
this will be exactly the same.
Yeah, I would like to hope so.
We did this story a little earlier in the week
okay.
here.
Then let me
just.
Okay. Let me.
We have to coordinate our.
Yes.
We have to strategize our conformity.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay, here we go.
And okay. It's very interesting how the left is obsessed with parlay.
Yes.
And it reveals very much their infatuation with thought control.
Absolutely.
Now,
they're trying to take it over. I mean, I signed up on Parlay. I haven't posted a whole heck of a lot, but I am reading the post. And already you can see the army of shills coming on in to, ridicule and attack anybody that is challenging the officially sanctioned version of what we laughingly call the truth.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
All right.
And especially when it comes to this last election. Now, this comes to us from another guy. I want you to remember the name because he's usually bang spot on. This man is Brandon Smith, altmarket.us. And he wrote recently about the realities behind power structures and how people dominate other people by conditioning them with false assumptions and misplaced fears. For example, many people make themselves easy to control by remaining dependent on governments during crises, events, and emergencies. So if you actually believe the government will protect you from any and all eventualities.
Okay. Hold that thought. I want you to complete this thing, but we got to take another break for commercials.
Okay.
And we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. And Lady Claire, would you pick up this story on Parlay?
Yes. It looks as though if you believe and trust the government that it's going to take care of you, why would you ever learn to protect and provide for yourself? And then this author makes the point, and I think it's a very well-made point. The infantilization of a society makes citizens very easy to dominate.
Yes.
Now, controlling a population is more about thought control or perception management than it is about direct force.
Direct force is expensive.
Yeah. Power is an illusion. No large group of people can be controlled by force alone, and eventually they'll find a way to wear down the totalitarian system and destroy it. So people need to be tricked into enslaving themselves and each other. The people must police the very prison they are trapped in, otherwise they could simply walk away anytime they wished. It's the only way a tyranny can survive in the long term. Now, the political left and social justice cult, the woke guys, have been particularly interested in the concept of thought control lately, or at least they are much more open about discussing their private obsessions these days. I have to say their rhetoric is not at all surprising, but the guy goes on to say, I think some analysis is needed to understand the root of their ideology and how they are able to rationalize this behavior. And he was watching an interview on MSNBC with an activist, aka fake journalist by the name of Ben Collins, who almost exclusively focuses his career on creating hit pieces and hatchet jobs on conservatives and the alternative media.
That's us.
Yeah, right. Hello, we're them. His focus is generally on what he calls disinformation and conspiracy theory. In other words, his job is to identify what totalitarians would refer to as wrongthink. The discussion centered on the social media website Parlay and how it represents a threat to our democracy. And
Now, that's an interesting idea. Freedom of speech is a threat to our democracy.
Yeah. How did we get here? How did we get here? I mean, this is the weirdest place I have ever been.
Yes.
And then the author goes on to say Collins is not all that interesting as an individual, and he appears to be more of a mouthpiece than a thinker.
Yes.
His work is very similar to that of SPLC's
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yes,
Okay.
in terms of tone and lack of tangible arguments or evidence. It is basic lowbrow propaganda revolving around little to no evidence or facts, i.e. propaganda for stupid people as opposed to carefully crafted propaganda designed to trick smarter people.
Well, most propaganda isn't really designed to survive careful analysis. So most propaganda, in fact, is aimed at people who are just not really thinking about what's going on.
Yeah.
Will just take in what they're being fed and regurgitate it.
Yeah.
And that's why we call people like this prostitutes and correspondents.
Yes. And he often uses omission of important details that might provide the viewer or reader with a clearer understanding of the subject matter. That said, the specific interview fascinated me because of how transparent the guy was with his lies and how honest he was, perhaps unwittingly, in his agenda. The initial goal of MSNBC and other establishment outlets was obviously to try to spread disinformation on Parler. When Parler's traffic began... Parlay, yes.
Sorry
traffic
about that.
Began
It's
to
French.
Yes, I know.
You're a francophone. You know
Yes,
better.
I know.
Okay.
Began to explode months ago. I think the media's intent was to slow the bleeding from sites like Twitter and Facebook.
Yes.
They were unsuccessful because when someone denigrates a source like Parlay, that will instantaneously cause me to go over there to see what the fuss is actually about. He goes on to say, I do not want my news censored, even when it makes me vastly uncomfortable. Like, for example, for me, the U.S. is continuing to enable Saudi war crimes in Yemen. I will therefore abandon Twitter and Facebook because they don't want articles that even begin to mention this butchery, not to mention war crimes in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. I cannot objectify human suffering generated by this country so that I can say, as Madeleine Albright did with 500,000 dead Iraqi children from starvation, that what the U.S. did was worth it. And I think that this lady may well encounter a very special place in hell when she leaves this mortal coil. Thank you very much.
She probably doesn't believe in heaven and hell, which is why she's able to do what she does here.
Yeah. And the reason that I support, and in my own small way, I'm a part of the alternative media, is that it does make me uncomfortable with what my alleged government is doing. And by the way, if the Electoral College in 4 days declares Biden the winner of the last election, I will understand that I and people who think like I do have utterly no voice in this government whatsoever, and that what we have every 4 years is an illusion of choice rather than choice per se at the electoral charade. And Mike, at the end of the day, it's the war party that always seems to win, and that's a heartbreaker.
Well, Eisenhower did warn us about the military-industrial complex, and of course, I stopped using Facebook and Twitter ages ago because I could see the censorship taking place there, and I mean, now we've got Facebook that is filtering hate speech against blacks, but not against whites. They're out there saying that they will delete any post that questions vaccine safety based on, whatever the government is telling them to do. So it's another propaganda outlet.
Yeah. And it's kind of, it has turned into, I guess you could call it the fifth estate.
Yes, excuse me.
Oh, dear. Little water, honey?
Yes.
Okay. And let's go to another issue that a lot of us are dealing with if we happen to live in big cities. Yes, this makes perfect sense. Cities across America are seriously slashing police budgets as crime rates soar.
Yeah, it's out of control.
It's insane.
They've had something like a 500% increase in carjackings in one city.
Wasn't it Minneapolis?
I think it was Minneapolis, yes.
Yeah.
And shootings in New York City are definitely up.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And this comes from another guy I kind of want you to think about and remember. His name is Michael Snyder, and it comes from themostimportantnews.com. And if violent crime rates are surging, shouldn't the police get more funding rather than less funding? And you would think that the answer would be pretty doggone obvious. But unfortunately, major cities all over the nation are choosing to significantly reduce police budgets right now. With less police on the streets, now criminals are going to have a field day.
Yes.
They're going to have even more freedom to terrorize urban communities, and that will likely accelerate the mass exodus out of our cities that we have already been witnessing. And it's really sad. I mean, some of our cities, I'm a native San Franciscan,
Yes.
okay? And there was a lot of beauty and charm and dynamism that I remember, even when Mike was working on The Day After Tomorrow up there.
Yes.
And we were there for a couple of months, I think.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
now these great cities are degenerating into crime-ridden, gang-infested war zones.
You know,
And the fact that
huge amounts of homeless,
Oh,
illegal
yeah,
immigrants,
yeah.
hypodermic needles littering the ground.
our economy is crumbling so rapidly that it's going to make that even worse. But not only that, but the morale of the good cops on the street is absolutely in the dumpster right now. Police are resigning in record numbers, and the bad apples are getting all the attention. Now, this can be fixed. And the question one has to ask is, in most places where you've got unions,
Yes.
I'm going to say the word out loud,
Yes.
unions for police,
Yes.
and for police and teachers, you can't get a bad cop off their job or a bad teacher gone from their position. And we have to look at this. We have to look at processes and procedures that get a bad cop off the street or a bad teacher out of the classroom. But we can't right now, and this is a crying shame. Now, people in power have the luxury of armed security around them. The rest of us just don't have that kind of money. I mean, we don't, you know.
I can fling things from the garbage can, over onto the street.
Yes. And if people are leaving cities at a breathtaking rate, it's absolutely the fault of city leadership, which instead of getting the bad police dismissed so they can't do what they have done to cause pain and suffering, they are reducing people to the point where ordinary human beings, you and me, getting hurt big time. And I've got to tell
Absolutely.
you.
And did you catch that story coming out of Seattle where
Which
they
one?
want to grant immunity for misdemeanors to people who are living in poverty, homelessness, drug addicts, and so forth and so on? I mean, it's literally a blanket get out of jail free card.
That's insane.
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane.
And right now, I've got to tell all of our listeners and viewers, I feel very blessed to be living in rural Indiana where
Yes.
family is close by. And I have a very supportive faith community about my music.
And we
which has
got a
been
lot of people
great.
living around us with guns.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I would be willing to bet that my pastor probably has one. I've never discussed it with him, but
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so.
He's former military, and yeah, you know.
You know, we're the odd holdouts here. You know, we're not armed to the teeth here.
Yeah, yeah. But right now, living close to family, it's all wonderful, and
Yes,
I'm
it is.
enjoying it.
Yes,
And
it is.
I do feel bad for people who feel compelled to move, and for police officers who are many times the good guys. My brother is a retired police officer,
Yes.
and he was one of the good guys when he was doing that. Okay.
Yes.
And he was honorable. He was, you know, never used excessive force. And I think that these people need to be honored, and the people who are causing the harm and the pain and the problem, those are the ones who need to be.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that the ones who are causing the harm and the problem were put up to it as part of this campaign about Black Lives Matter, defund the police. I think this was definitely all planned here.
Right.
And yeah, it's an ugly situation. Okay,
Right.
we're going to open the phone lines for the rest of the program. Area code 512-248-8252. And let's take your next story then. Did I catch you with a mouthful of water here?
I am so sorry.
No,
okay.
no, that's okay.
there are some
It's live radio.
there are some smart doorbell devices that need to be avoided because of security vulnerabilities. Now, after months of lockdown and social distancing, yada, 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 due to the pandemic, Americans have greatly had their work environments shifted from commercial spaces to their homes, and their shopping habits have migrated to e-commerce. Staying at home has led to a massive home improvement wave in spring through summer. Many people remodeled or simply updated the technology in their homes to fit their new at-home lifestyle. But one update was in smart home security systems, including smart doorbells featuring microphones and cameras sold on Amazon and eBay. Now, while these smart doorbells have made millions of Americans' lives easier this year, there is a huge problem out there, Mike, and that is many of these devices come with numerous security vulnerabilities, according to Cyberscoop, citing a new report from the UK-based security company NCC Group. And they say that one flaw could allow a remote attacker to break into the wireless network by swiping login credentials. Another critical bug that you need to be aware of, and which has been apparently around for years, could enable attackers to intercept and manipulate data on the network, Cyberscoop said.
Yes.
NCC found that 11 smart doorbells sold on Amazon and eBay raised concerns that some of the devices were storing sensitive data, including location data and audio and video captured by the doorbell's camera on insecure servers. This is not a good thing.
No, it isn't. And there are many places where the police are now saying, please hook your video doorbell up to our central system.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, Amazon, interestingly, has released a statement about the compromised smart doorbells sold on its website, indicating it requires products sold on its website to be compliant with applicable laws and regulations, and that it has tools to detect unsafe or non-compliant products from being listed in our stores. Oh, really?
But I think the problem is that there really aren't very many laws and regulations governing how secure these systems have to be. And I remember not too long ago, there was a huge recall of one particular model of these video doorbells because they were overheating and causing fires.
Ooh.
Anyway, we're getting close to the end of the show here. We've got some callers waiting on the line, and I'd like to close the show out with them. So let's go to Mark in Georgia. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I guess you're well familiar with Ben Swan, and one thing he said about we need to sort out what is legitimate about defunding the police, more accurately, not using so-called law enforcement as a revenue stream in terms of fines, fees, and penalties as a means of laying the cops, as like John Statmiller calls them, the Keystone Copper cops. And they're more about extracting funds from people than they are about protecting people's rights. And we need to recognize
that's a big problem with civil forfeiture for a very, very long time.
And that's absolutely appalling that they even think in those, that as far as I'm concerned, if a Leo pulls that crap on somebody and I'm on the jury of somebody, say some Leo gets injured or killed pulling that crap, I'm going to be very sympathetic with the person who said, excuse me, you're just a thief with a badge when you come at me pulling that crap. And I'm not saying this to disrespect law enforcement. I just say legitimate law enforcement wouldn't pull that. It's one thing if you have a legitimate body of evidence, and, that's one thing. But extracting funds or resources from people who are already having a hard enough time making ends meet is one, I think that's a pretty good way of getting injured or killed. And I have very little sympathy with any Leo who pulls that kind of crap with someone. So I don't mean
unfortunately,
I just say that.
Unfortunately,
I'm saying that I'm not likely to wind up on the jury.
Okay, well, unfortunately, with the police budgets being slashed across the country, there's going to be an even stronger push for fines and fees and civil forfeiture to try and keep these police departments running. So they've actually made the problem a lot worse rather than better. Anyway, Mark, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and back with more phone calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment on our Powhana Friday, and we're going to go back to the phones to Kathleen in Texas. Kathleen, welcome back to the show. Glad we got the gremlins figured out. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike and Claire. I know I called a few years ago and told you this, but it's so beautiful to have this nice light Christmas medley that you play. It's just perfect. So I love the song, so just thought I'd mention it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed doing that project, and I think it shows.
Yes.
Oh, it's wonderful. Okay, take care.
You too.
All right. Thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to John in Wisconsin. Hello, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Constitution and treaties, what it says there.
Yes.
And when you read the Constitution, you have to be careful because you might end up reading the index to the Constitution and you get the wrong ideas.
Yes.
And if you read the part about the treaties in the index, it says something to the effect that, well, they are the supreme law of the land. But when you read the Article 6, Section 2 in the Constitution, you'll see that the treaties have to be made in pursuant with the laws of the land, laws set down by the Constitution. So if the treaty violates them principles, well, then it ain't a real treaty. And that's one of their favorite things. I remember even when I was a kid, they would talk about John Foster Dulles running around the world making treaties to, that you could override the Constitution.
Yeah, which was definitely illegal to do here.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when they were first trying to set up the North American Union, and some liberals made the claim that because Canada had a gun ban or strict gun control, that their gun control laws would apply to the United States simply because we signed an economic treaty with them. And of course, they were simply laughed off the podium for that one.
Right.
Okay.
And one thing else could I add to that, when they make a treaty like with the United Nations or something, they're actually making a treaty with themselves because they got veto power there, and and they're part of it. So that kind of nullifies a lot of it too. And another thing that kind of falls into,
we have a government that is ignoring the Constitution. They're certainly ignoring the Bill of Rights. This social media running roughshod over free speech definitely violates the First Amendment. Their argument is they're private corporations. The First Amendment shouldn't apply. But then you go back to the Citizens United decision, which said that corporations are people for the purposes of First Amendment protections.
Yeah.
That has to work both ways.
Right. They claim that the corporations have the same rights as a person. Right.
Except we have the right to die and they do not. Anyway, John, I got to let you go here. We're at the end of the program. Tomorrow is Claire and my 26th anniversary. And they said it would never last. So
they said it would never start.
They said it would never start. I'm still owed money on that one. So anyway, stay tuned for John Chad Miller. I'm sure that he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It's the Christmas season. Put a little something in our Christmas stockings here. We'll be back on Monday. Have a good weekend and aloha, America.